Alright everyone, we start off today talking about the tale of two sad campaigns, the Rondesantis campaign and the Nikki Haley campaign. The Nikki Haley campaign is basically an Astroturf. That's why it's getting almost non-stop positive coverage, even from media sites that typically say like conservatives are evil and stuff like that. You see a lot of pulled punches, a lot of avoidance of talking about her gaffes or sort of explaining them for her. Other than with the Civil War comments, that one definitely hurt. Nikki Haley gets treated that way because of the wishful thinking of the elites, the unipartyists, that she's still like capable of viability. Again, the problem being she's in third in Iowa, so Trump is going to take that. We'll get to Desantis after and Chip Roy's comments actually from the other day. That's the wishful thinking part. It's amusing to me. Nikki Haley is behind in New Hampshire as well, although not by a large margin. The problem is that if you look at the polls there, they're not being particularly reliable. So you have a couple of polls showing, recent polls showing Nikki Haley almost or even within single digits of Donald Trump, and him riding in the 30s. And then you have a bunch of polls showing him somewhere in the low to mid 40s and Haley stalled out around 30. I tend to think it's somewhere between the two. I can envision Trump riding on 40 and Haley riding on 30 or 35. The problem is, of course, that means she loses the state. The Astroturf is hoping that she prevails in New Hampshire and then somehow in the subsequent primary in South Carolina, she manages to compensate for her 30-point deficit against Trump, and that's her home state. And I think that even if Trump were to lose New Hampshire, I don't think that he will, but let's say he does. Loses New Hampshire in a squeaker. He goes on to win Nevada and South Carolina. There's no longer any particular reason for anyone else to remain in the race at that time. Desantis would be a fool to stay in on Super Tuesday, having not won one of the first states. He's probably by then dropped out. We're not sure who he would endorse. He may throw in with Nikki Haley and say, well, if I give her a boost in New Hampshire and help her win her home state, then I can be running mate or something like that. It's a long shot sort of Hail Mary thing. I don't know that that'll even happen. And if Haley performs more poorly than expected in New Hampshire, she's toast. And that could happen. Again, what we're seeing in polling in recent election history is that sometimes you have a significant swing in one direction or another. Now, of course, a significant swing towards Haley in New Hampshire puts her within striking distance. I just don't think that it's feasible that the swing is large enough to compensate. You don't have that much longer. We're a week out from Iowa and not much longer out from New Hampshire. There's not a whole lot of time left to campaign at all. If I were Trump right now, I would be spending all of my time, though, in New Hampshire and running ads against Haley as opposed to wasting time on the already effectively won Iowa. That's where the wishful thinking comes in. Again, Chip Roy the other day saying, well, I predict a big surprise in Iowa. It's going to be Desantis out of nowhere. Everyone's going to be real surprised. The problem, again, is that you don't even really have a huge deviation in polling. It's not like New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, you've got those two polls that show Nikki Haley ponderously close to Trump. You have other polls that show her well behind and him within the safe zone running up near 50. In Iowa, you have, in the aggregate, relative stability within the polling. Virtually all the polls show Trump up at least by 25 points. He's riding on 50 or above that in most of those polls. He's above 50 in the aggregate. That polling is stable. And while there will be a swing, probably against Trump, although again, Iowa's unpredictable. While there will probably be a swing against Trump in favor of DeSantis in the final result, I do believe that's likely the case. Even a 10-point swing wouldn't be enough. You would still have Donald Trump riding in the low 40s. You would end up with DeSantis riding in the mid-30s or thereabouts, and that's with an enormous swing. For Trump only, against Trump solely, and losing literally all of those votes to only one candidate. If anything, I would think there would also be a swing towards Nikki Haley at the last minute. It's not just going to be, 100,000 voters or whoever, however many that would be, decided last minute, well, you know what, I like this Trump dude and I've been supporting him for months and months, but yeah, okay, I'll drive with DeSantis instead. Again, that would be historically much more of a swing than you would expect. It would be beyond any norm. It would be the largest swing in Iowa that has happened in living memory. So I don't think that happens. So when you say, well, it's going to be DeSantis out of nowhere, he surprises in Iowa, I just don't think that that's likely. I think Trump wins Iowa. He gets a boost from that. It helps him to edge out Haley in New Hampshire. She drops. DeSantis drops before Super Tuesday, and the rest is rather formulaic. Now, don't put it past the lame establishment to try to pull off shenanigans on Nikki Haley's behalf. They do have capabilities of doing so. It is arguably easier in a primary than it is in the general election. There's less oversight involved. Don't put it past the Uniparty to attempt that. The problem is there's no feasible way to explain, I think, to voters why Trump would lose by any margin when he's so far ahead in all available polling at the national level and in most available polling in all of the starting states. It would be, I think, too much of an anomaly. If anything, should that happen, the Republican Party is prematurely ejaculating and then putting itself to sleep like a rabid dog. Because Trump voters, I don't think, would actually accept the final outcome. If it looks like there's any shenanigans at all, why would they flock to the GOP candidate knowing full well that the party has sabotaged itself? You know, they can claim, well, we did it out of principle to stop a felon from running for office. We don't want to besmirch the great GOP. Well, the problem is roughly a third of your party is comprised of hardcore Trump fans. Trump would have difficulty getting below 35 no matter what he did. That would probably still, by the way, nationally speaking, assuming it's in the right spots, give him the nomination. So even if you peeled back that layer of voters, it probably wouldn't even matter. I think that his reasonably hard support is somewhere in the low 40s. Well, you're getting up towards half the field there. In national polling, he's been well ahead of 50 now for some time. It shows no signs of a decline. And it would be difficult, I think, to explain to primary goers how Trump could feasibly lose, like, imagine South Carolina. Nikkihaley hasn't really even targeted her own home state. It's a stunning admission, by the way, that she's a one-trick pony. So when I see the Fox town hall or CNN town hall rather, or anything, they have Haley aboard and they treat her with kid gloves and they astroturf her constantly. It's like at the very least Rondesantis has some redeeming qualities and selling points. I will tell you this. If Nikkihaley were the nominee, I would not vote for Nikkihaley. I would vote for whoever the Libertarians nominate her. I would vote for Mickey Mouse. Well, actually, considering Disney these days, I wouldn't vote for Mickey either. I don't know, I'd write myself in. I'll start a write-in as a joke campaign or something like that. Tarl Warwick for president, yay. That's probably what I would do. I'm not going to vote for the warmonger. She's no better than Biden. There's no redeeming quality there, and she's woke too. So I have a feeling that in New Hampshire, she's benefiting from the fact that New Hampshire Republicans are more amenable to like the socialist issue thing as far as like moral concerns go. It's a weird state. I mean, you've got the Free State Project on one end, and then you've got like the Haley Rhinos on the other end. Sununu, of course, has been stumping for, just like Kim Reynolds stumping for Rondesantis in Iowa. It's just that the gap is so large, there's no feasible methodology by which he can take the state. And if Trump gets any boost at all from Iowa, should he win, especially if it's by a higher than expected margin, he's going to crush everyone, I think, going forward. That's about all. Peace out.